And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Welcome to the only independent news and opinion program where we chronicle two distinct possibilities, either the demise and possible extinction of the Homo sapien, or the greatest leap forward in all of human history. One thing is certain, there is no status quo. Hello and welcome. This is the Daily Australian Radio Show, episode number 59 for Thursday, March 27th, 2025. My name is Jason Olborn, and my other partner in this venture is none other than the wonderful Nicola Charles. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning, listeners. We're not going extinct. We're like cockroaches. We're not going anywhere. So let's continue to scupper their plans. And let me just say thank you for the detailed message from an Australian bus driver. Now, I'm sure you all know bus drivers work for the council, mate. And this bus driver has his phone set up with the bus Bluetooth Wi-Fi system. And basically everyone on his bus gets to listen to what he's listening to, which is really interesting. I would call out to other bus drivers to do the same. And he actually looks in his little mirror at the front and he sees their faces, because what does he play all day? Our show. So he is subtly and cleverly giving people an education, Jason. So thank you for that. I think that's hilarious.
Well, that's fantastic. So therefore our audience has just jumped up by what, 20, 30, 40, 50 people?
Yeah.
How about that? That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I wonder who else is playing our show out to a wider audience. That's brilliant.
You don't expect to get on a bus and get like a whole big bucket of truth dropped on your head. And also, I just want to quickly read out, because we did put a call out on the show yesterday, because I try not to interact with AI too much. And I said to fans, if you want to ask AI what it thinks about me, and part of it thinks that Jason's a history teacher, which is quite humorous. They asked Grok, the listener, about me. Now, initially it chugged out, the awful things that, the government placed press that I'm sort of Australia's biggest conspiracy theorist. So the listener went back to Grok and said, Grok, can you please do a deep search and think on Nicola Charles, look at her history and her employment and her social media, such as the White Rabbit podcast, and give me a summary of her personality, her beliefs, and her strengths and weaknesses. And I expect a very good and detailed review with no errors or speculation. Please do not use the words conspiracy or theory or theorist in your description or in any section of the summary. Jason, are you ready for what Grok thinks about me? This is interesting, because I'll tell you why I find this interesting before I read it out. What this is, in real terms, Jason, is a background check. So this is why governments are really interested in AI, right? Because AI is doing a psychological almost breakdown and summary of who we all are. So here we go. All right, says Grok. Grok actually starts with, all right. Okay, so this is, very friendly. It's definitely learned how to engage with humans. Let's start by gathering all the information I have on Nicola Charles. I need to focus on her history, employment, social media presence, and her podcast, The White Rabbit. I'll also need to analyze her personality, beliefs, strengths, and weaknesses based on the available data. I mean, I'm sorry, Jason. I thought profiling was illegal. First, let's look at her background. Nicola Charles is a British-Australian actress, author, and podcaster. She was born in Worcestershire, England, around 1970. Her father was a professional motorcycle racer and her mother a microbiologist. She moved to London at 18 and began her career in television commercials, notably for Coca-Cola's UK Sprite launch. She later moved to Australia and landed a role on the TV show Neighbours as Sarah Beaumont, which she played for 15 years. All correct. Now, regarding her employment, I got a bit panicky when I read this. After her acting career, she transitioned into podcasting and social media. She hosts the White Rabbit podcast, which focuses on social and political commentary. She also co-hosts the Daily Australian Radio Show and has a presence on platforms like Twitter, where she goes by the handle All Bite No Bark 88. Let's delve into her social media and podcast content. From the search results, it's clear that she discusses a wide range of topics, often challenging mainstream narratives. For instance, she has expressed views on the Voice to Parliament referendum in Australia, suggesting it could lead to a UN takeover, which is a controversial stance. She has also been critical of pandemic-related measures such as lockdowns and vaccines. Analysing her personality, cheeky bastard. Analysing her personality, she seems to be opinionated, outspoken, and not afraid to tackle controversial subjects. She appears to value the free exchange of ideas and open debate, as indicated by her podcast description. Her background in acting might contribute to her ability to engage audiences effectively. Now, for her beliefs, it's evident that she is skeptical of mainstream narratives and often questions official accounts. She seems to lean towards views that are critical of government actions and global institutions like the UN. Her stance on the Voice to Parliament and pandemic measures suggests she might align with libertarian or anti-establishment ideologies. Nicola's strengths appear to be well researched. Nicola's strengths are that she is well researched and articulate, able to discuss complex topics in depth. Her background in acting likely aids her presenting information in an engaging manner. She also seems to have a dedicated following, as evidenced by her podcast Patreon page and social media. Last one, her weaknesses. Her controversial views might alienate some audiences, limiting her reach. Additionally, her tendency to challenge mainstream narratives could lead to accusations of spreading misinformation, as seen on the ABC News article about her stance on the Voice to Parliament referendum. I mean, isn't that crazy that there's a machine out there, Jason, collating who we are and what we are? I mean, this is staggering.
I feel like that you just read out your school report from the AI principal.
The AI report. That's a background check, by the way. That's weird. That's a profile.
Well, it's interesting. And what happens when it gets it wrong? Like, the history teacher thing. Maybe I'm that good at recollecting what's happened in the past that AI's granted me honorary history teacher status.
Yeah, rewriting history for a start.
Well, we can only do that if you're the victor. So there you go, everyone. That's a good sign that we are winning this information war. That's hilarious, isn't it?
Well, thank you for doing that. I mean, it's nice when you ask listeners to undertake a project like that and they do it. It was very interesting. I was at work yesterday and it was quite humorous reading that in my lunch hour, I have to say. So thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I posted that on X and I said, okay, AI, let's call a truce. And as I said, it doesn't really engage with me in an aggressive way, not yet. But of course, the problem is, the worry is that it's always sort of in the background, aiding decisions like banking and loans and mortgages and, job employment and all that kind of stuff. So it does get quite detailed and it goes into, it does, basically it's a researcher, isn't it? It does all the things that would take us days and days and weeks, except it does it in a split second. So for governments to have a hold of this is reasonably dangerous, I would say.
So then you add in the concept of quantum computing. So the ability to work at speeds that are unfathomable. And then if you apply or enter the data for the AI to be able to interpret, this is why I say that he or she or it that controls the AI. So now you start to form a different opinion. So if it's this beast of intelligence, artificially created and not organic, that being the point, that it's not natural, can't be connected to God in any way, except a derivative of God's own creations, which itself is an odd thing. So then you wonder who puts it to good use or to bad use, and does that mean anything? And if AI is allowed to be created, so in other words, we think that by creating something independent of us, it starts from a position of perfection, perfectness, but it's automatically corrupted by its inputs. So what I'm trying to say is that there has to be different approaches. And even Musk said yesterday that the Google approach and the ChatGPT approach and the approach and the Grok approach are all different. And
Yes. I saw that. He said Grok is the only honest one. My concern is that, you say something that worries them or they disagree with, basically freedom of speech, right?
Yeah.
And then they punch into their quantum computer, where is she right now and who is she with? And within seconds, they would have that, Jason. She's in this cafe sitting at the north window. These are the people she's having a meeting with. And by the way, here's the background checks of the people she's having a meeting with. These are her friends. I mean, that's very concerning.
Well, then anything to do with surveillance is a cross, isn't it? It's something that crosses the line here, but it
Where's
seems
the
to be that.
warrant? It used to be you needed a warrant to, Americans call it wiretapping, which is listening to your phone calls. I think we now know that AI is always wiretapping. It can see our emails, it can see our banking, it can see our text messages. It even has access to photos, private photos, and you can imagine what can be on private photos. It has access to all that without a warrant. That's the part I don't understand, Jason. That's why I've said on this show, we need to talk to Rennick and the other guys about a legal framework of protections, legislation to protect us. Because have we reached a point where authority, whoever that is, and a lot of these authorities, particularly global ones, aren't elected, they can do this to us and have this information on us now without a warrant. Policing has been changed, the law has been changed. That's the sticking point for me, because this is crossing a Rubicon. And as democratic countries, we were given no public consultation on this.
Very, very good point. Well, I've just noticed that Tony Nikolic is running for the People First Party. Tony ran with me with UAP last time around. He's running for the seat of Werriwa in southwest Sydney. Tony's one of the very popular and hardest working legal eagles in the third party or freedom space. So we might be able to reach out to Tony and get his opinion on what we do there in terms of a legal framework. He's worked in a lot of spaces, including with whistleblower protections, etc. And it would be nice to get his perspective. And going into the election, I think a lot of these issues that are coming up are really important, and to think to the positives that are coming out of it, like with minerals, resources, etc., where we need to rethink what's going on now that we've learnt yesterday in the budget that Labor is taking the country down a $1 trillion debt pathway. Budget deficits forecast all the way out to 2036 now. So you are living in a world where we have got the rawest of deals on our raw materials. And
Yeah,
like
look,
Russell,
this is because it's all global and unelected. That's what's going on. Actually, I was watching and listening and reading the Global Biodiversity Assessment, the UN's own document. Don't call me a conspiracy theorist. Anyone can go and read it. And on page 782, it literally states, and this was my issue with the Voice to Parliament referendum, that they put me on the ABC, which was referenced there by Grok, saying that I was a conspiracy theorist for it. Well, I'm not, because it's on page 782 of the Global Biodiversity Assessment of the UN. And it says private land is unsustainable. And it also says golfing is unsustainable. My husband won't be happy. Skiing is unsustainable. Fishing is unsustainable. Meat eating is unsustainable. And it says, Jason, that the legal system is unsustainable. When you ask about why don't we have legal protections, and it says it's unsustainable because it doesn't work to protect and sustain the land. It only works to protect human beings, and we're no longer important, right? The rewilding is the important thing. And this then it references Agenda 21, all these unelected global governance bodies, the public-private partnerships. We always said they were fundamental to this. ESG scores, they're fundamental. It referenced the three pillars: social, environmental, and economic. All of those things have to change, which essentially makes a social credit score. And it says that no one has any more than anyone else, which I find hilarious, because all of these unelected people doing this, Jason, are fabulously wealthy. People send me lots of angry posts about Zelensky saying, how does this, stripper and exotic dancer have millions and billions? And I always say, well, he followed orders. But there's a really scary line, Jason, and it says, in this report, the Global Biodiversity Assessment, it says, the earth groans every time there's a new birth. This is a very anti-human agenda, Jason. It's very, very worrying. Yeah.
it's a horrible thing to
Horrible.
even
Yeah.
to make that out. It's just astonishing, isn't it? Who would have thought that new life, new human life, could ever be thought of as something that's that works against Mother Earth, for goodness sake.
And AI, right? This isn't AI's fault, actually. AI is just a machine. It's just a tool so that they can take more control. It's not AI's fault. It's the fault of the humans behind it.
Mm.
And this anti-human agenda is being initiated by humans. I mean, we are literally our own worst enemy. I've always known that with most people anyway, but this is proof of it. This whole movement is proof of it. We are a horrid, horrid species. There is no other species on Earth that would work this hard for this long to destroy itself. We are literally stupid.
Yeah, no doubt. And we we're the only intelligent being on Earth, apparently, unless there's something hiding underneath the surface or something like that. But we have tickets on ourselves that we're also the only one in the universe and therefore the smartest. But we're also, that also means if we're the only one, we're the dumbest. So which end do you start from? But any species that wants to take itself out must have a satanic component to it. So therefore, we're not all like that, but we are ruled in a way. And sometimes you think that maybe Earth is the devil's domain, and the spirit world is God's domain, and what we are here is we're coming here to have a spiritual experience, but we're caught up in a domain that is not actually belonging to God. It's a weird thing to think about. Like it's just all these things that spin around in your head.
Well,
You
they're
just wonder.
subverting God, Jason. That's what they're doing. These people have a God complex, right? They're subverting
Yes.
God and also Mother Nature. So at the same time that they're saying we're trying to protect Mother Nature, they're working against Mother Nature because it's spirituality and God and Spirit and Mother Earth that has created the civilizations we have now, right? Where the Earth provides. I know they came at us with the Western pharmaceuticals that are essentially made of petrol. Just look at the ingredients for Vaseline, right? And all your face creams, you're just rubbing petrol on your face, which, next time you fill up at the hose, make sure you splash a bit on your hand and use it as a moisturizer. It's bloody ridiculous, right? And so, but they're going against Mother Earth. They're going against this planet because she's provides medicine. It's like when you get stung by a stinging nettle, within 10 feet, that's the rule in England, there's a dock leaf, and you rub the dock leaf on your leg and it gets rid of the sting. So there are medicines out there that Mother Earth provides. She provides sunlight, she provides water and rain, and she provides all the things that we need. And they're trying to circumvent that. They're saying, we know better than Mother Earth. We know better than God. And that has to be satanic, Jason. You're absolutely right.
Amazing, isn't it? That it becomes obvious, it becomes self-evident that this is where the approach comes from. Because the opposite is true. Everyone still wants to believe that the government and authority is here to do good by the people. And
They're
yet,
doing good by a very small amount of people, probably about 300, if you know what I mean. That's
and
who
yet,
they're doing good for, right? It isn't good for the rest of us. And fancy saying something like in this report, no one has any more than anyone else. Do you really think the Clintons, the Soros, all of them, Bill Gates, they're going to diminish their wealth because we all have to have nothing? It literally said no one person's house is going to be bigger than anyone else's house. That's a concern because the houses they're building look like little rabbit cages. They're tiny, they're horrific, and they've got smart meters on the side. Smart meters were referenced because they have to manage how much energy you get. And we've already seen it in Australia and America, where on a hot day they turn off the air conditioning in the regions where people are hot. It's evil. This is a conspiracy, and conspiracy is still a crime, and these people must be brought to justice. It was George Bush that signed America on to George Bush Jr. Oh, was it senior? Bit confused then. Signed on to this Agenda 21. I think it was senior because he was really into Agenda 21. And then it was the Trump's first administration who took America out of Agenda 21. The problem is, Trump is going to take care of America and America first, and that's all great. And we're cheerleaders for it. Yay, yay, yay. But the problem is we're all left now. We're all collateral damage because I do think that we're going to be seen as sort of Trump's breadbasket. Oh, what can I get from there? What can I get from here? For instance, in Gaza, I was at work yesterday and the IDF announced that, you've got 24 hours to leave northern Gaza. Obviously something horrid was coming. 50,000 women and children have been killed there. We don't hear too much about that, and anyone who tries to discuss it gets slammed down. They're not allowed their freedom of speech. but there's a massive offshore gas reserve just off Gaza. So when Trump and America talk about turning it into this resort and perhaps it's going to be a smart city and area, I don't know. But really, it's about resources again, Jason. Definitely about resources in Australia and definitely about resources in Ukraine. So it's quite dark. So who's getting all these resources? Is it a case of countries just want control of all these global resources? They've realized, how precious they are and how vital they are for all this AI rubbish. And if that's the case, if we're just a breadbasket here in Australia, what does that mean for our quality of life? You said yesterday about we should have got a percentage. We should be getting money from this iron ore, and we're not. How is that possible? How is that possible that we're being ignored, Jason? That it's just literally being taken from our nations? Someone's got to stop this, and I'm hoping that these good guy politicians in Australia have got the right idea about that.
Well, the conversation I had with Russell Broadbent on my other show was eye-opening because I put it to him and he basically said we need to rethink and rejig everything that we're doing. I then asked him if you took that 220,000 US dollars per person, if you divided up that one iron ore site in that particular area, 220 US $1,000. That's roughly 330,000 Australian dollars per person. If you have an average household of three people, let's say, which generally they're a bit more, that's $990,000. In most cases, that would be enough to pay off a mortgage or to buy a new home.
Mm.
So every family in the country, if just on this one resource, if you were able to do that and extract it and whatever, would mean that everyone would have a home paid for before you start.
So not only are we being robbed, we're also being told that, we may not have a democratic free speech to talk about it.
Well,
It's not good.
this is it. So what we're seeing now, and this is what bugs me, is our politicians will say they'll say one thing and do the other, and you know that they're not serving our best interests, and we're sick and tired of being lied to, and we know we're not getting the best deal. But when people are convinced that $5 a week in the budget is a good deal, and they hang off the budget, people who don't even care about politics will tune in to find out what goodies they got from the budget, like it's a show bag at the Easter show that their parents buy them when they're seven. And it's the same thing. Like, who really gives a shit if the government gives you $5 a week? Are you that pathetic? And you're
Well,
not
I
that
don't.
pathetic.
Oh, what
But
about these stories, Jason, coming out that all of the supermarkets are lowering their prices except for Woolworths? Of course, that's a Rock one, which is a really odd story the day after the budget, right? But they wouldn't be lowering their prices by much. They're suddenly realizing, oh shit, people are starving in Australia. They're on to us, mate. We better lower the prices a bit. Don't throw us breadcrumbs like that. There are people whose mortgages have doubled. Sort your shit out, or you're not governing anybody, are you?
No, and that's it. So when push comes to shove, and the people are saying, okay, we have most certainly had enough of this particular system, we will vote out the uni party. I predict one way or another, we're either going to get an Albanese very poor minority government, and that would be the my worst case scenario. I certainly don't want Albanese to be re-elected in a majority. We get a Dutton, potentially a minority Liberal national government. That'd be kind of weird because who would form the balance of power there? Or we get a Liberal majority. And I think that even if we do, we're going on a pathway towards another one term and the final one term government before we get the revolution that we're looking for towards 2028. So
But
we can
don't think. This is just my hypothesis, right? As a watcher and a researcher, don't think that they don't, because businesses have these long plans, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. That's always been the case for businesses I've worked for. Don't think that they don't know and foreshadow and foresee this, and that they're already lining the pockets of the third parties or the major parties or somebody, perhaps the somebodies that won't join the Australia First Alliance. I don't know. But there's some strange shenanigans going on because they know that, well, we're going to need to control these other people now. Or are they just happy with the damage they've already done? But I don't think this mission, this Agenda 21 and of course Agenda 30 is over yet. So where's the oversight? How do we check, who's getting these grants and who's receiving money so that when they do sort of, appear on the political scene, that they're not already owned and bought off. I mean, it's a massive concern because some of these third parties, and I won't name them again, but there was a third party who said, I've had a win for you because I'm going to stop them raising a schooner of beer by 10 cents. It's the same thing on a different scale with a minor party, right? So it's not good enough. It's not governance, right? You can't. We're talking about political parties here. Who's better, left and right, red or blue? Minority government, majority government. None of these people are fit for purpose. That's the problem we've
Mm.
got. So it's like, you know, you could say it's a choice between dumb and dumber, crap and crapper, but it's really a choice between one incompetent body and another incompetent body, likely corrupted, likely not working for the people. And so we've got this constant battle. And I don't think we can glean any joy, any satisfaction, any feeling of a win because, we don't have anyone coming in pushing back against this stuff like a Trump character. And yes, I know he's in with, Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison and all that stuff. And that does concern me. But he is pushing back against these global unelected bodies who have their own agendas. I mean, that is a crime. Foreign interference in Australian democracy, let's just take Australia as an example, is a crime. So why isn't it a crime that we're adhering to the diktats of these unelected global bodies? Who the hell do they think they are allowing this to happen? And we need to hold our politicians to account for allowing it to happen, Jason.
Well, for many years, we've known that, for example, our mineral resources are bountiful. We have virtually unlimited supply, and yet our politicians play a different game, a different pathway, and serve the corporate interests that feed them, and they take the cents on the dollar in returns in terms of jobs down the track, etc. But now it's almost impossible that people can't work this stuff out. So, needless to say, the political establishment are doing everything they can to suppress the fundraising of the smaller parties so that they can maintain that political advantage. However,
Yeah.
any revolution, Barack Obama, would you believe it, proved it with his grassroots $21 campaign. That's what they were raising, I think $21 per person. And that's what will come here. So this is why the Australia First Alliance is so important, because it's designed to start building a crossbench of senators that will be enough to be able to hold the balance of power. So that means you can block pretty much all bad legislation at that point. Now, you let the government come at you and they'll attack them and they'll keep going and they'll play the game, and the people will only get more and more fed up because they don't want it. Now, a couple of things, and before we get to the news bulletin, because we're halfway through the show already, Nicola, but I'm going to get to that, and it's going to sort of come through in the news. But it's now been discovered that tucked away in the budget forward estimates was the revelation of extra tax revenue expected to be collected from superannuation funds over the next 5 years.
Oh, God.
So what they've done is that they've kept in there this extra 15% tax on superannuation accounts over $3 million. Now people go, well, who's got $3 million in super? Not many people. And that's a tax on the wealthy. But what does Labor always do? When it needs money, it just lowers the threshold. So soon it'll be 2 million, then it'll be 1 million, and then they'll say it'll be anyone over $1 million, which is considered to be a lot of money, which we know $1 million in the real world is not a lot of money anymore. It's probably the same as what $200,000 was if you're buying a house 20 years ago. So it's not a lot of money. Now, that's scary, because if you've got to save your money for super, and the Peter Costello generation basically paid no tax, and now our generation, people in their 50s who are looking at retiring in 15 years, we're going to walk smack bang once again, Generation X, and get whopped in the face. Generation X has been screwed the entire lifetime of certainly in my life, for how it's gone. Let me paint a picture. I'm the first generation to pay HEX since the Gough Whitlam generation. So I was literally year 2 of the HEX debt coming in. So I paid for my university degree, albeit I didn't pay as much as people are paying today. But now the Labor government is deciding to cut back on HEX debts. I paid the highest price for a property based on the Paul Keating years of bringing husband and wife in, so that we paid the highest prices in mortgages to get into the housing market. I paid the highest price for a lack of promotion in my career, because Generation X's were the last one that did the 30 years in letters before they got moved up to parcels. How many people in our generation didn't get promoted to anywhere significant, got into their 30s and 40s in the corporate world, and were overlooked for the 20-year-old coming up behind, the Gen Y kid that comes up and gets promoted? So we've paid every big, long thing that you could and had no benefit like our parents did. Inflation paid off their homes. Our life, it hasn't, because we lived in the era of 2% inflation. We had to pay them off ourselves. We never got promoted at work. We didn't get pay rises in this 20-year period where we were in peak thing under Keating, because all pay rises were only ever done over productivity increases. You just didn't get CPI increases. I reckon in my life, in 35 years of working, I've probably had 4 pay rises. And the only way you get them is by starting a new job and negotiating before you walk in the front door. And now we're facing a time where they're going to make us pay super, which was originally only 3%. Now it's like 10 or 12% or whatever people are getting on their salaries. And then they're going to slug you with 15% again at the other end after paying 15% along the way. This bloke, Albanese,
It's
is kidding
double
himself.
dipping.
It's not only that, but it is aiming at the last people that it can afford to pay and have done all the hard yards. And we're the ones that literally sat in the back of station wagons without seatbelts. We're the ones that, if your mum said, if you're not bleeding, go to school. Like the last people that weren't soft. This is how we lived. So it will. This is why I think the Gen Xers are the ones leading the political revolution. But we are so slow to start, and that's no one's fault, because we're the only ones that have done the hard yards for so long. Everything in our lifetime doesn't take. We don't get a job and complain if we don't get promoted 3 weeks later. We get a job. We get a job and do 3 years and wonder what's going to happen in the next 3 years.
Yeah, but they've woken a sleeping giant, Jason.
Yes, they have.
Generation X are a wonderful generation. I know I am Generation X, so I'm a bit biased. But we were the generation that knew how to work hard and party hard. And you know what? We're the generation that know the difference between right and wrong. We might be the last generation to really, truly know the difference between right and wrong and about morality, right? Because the younger generations have been so co-opted into things that are completely wrong via media and social media in particular. My 17-year-old daughter said to me yesterday, Mum, I truly believe that social media has ruined the world. Right. So they're in trouble because Generation X, once you get our backs up, we were busy, as you say, getting on with our lives, working our asses off. We get up early and do this show because, we have to go and work our asses off doing other things. And we just take that as part of our life. And they're indoctrinating the younger generations. Oh, you don't need to work, just go on Centrelink, minimum basic income. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about your career, or stay in education till you're 34 and then you'll be overqualified and can't get a job. And the people who've got the jobs are the people that went and swept floors in factories at the age of 16 and worked their way up. We are a different generation. We're a dangerous generation. And I suspect that's why they would quite like to inject us all, Jason.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Bring in the Soylent Green and put an expiry date on your life because you're too much of a pest. And of course, we are the generation that grew up with phones attached to walls and video cassette players, and a very, very different era. We've seen both sides of that fence. So we are a very dangerous generation indeed, and it will be those that if you want something done, ask a busy person. And so
we always got around it, Jason. You've just mentioned, okay, the music cassette. Remember they did that thing where you couldn't tape over the cassette because they wanted you to go and buy a new one, and we used to stick chewing gum in the thing or blue tack so that you could, so that you went, screw you, I'm taping over it whether you like it or not. We found ways around things. We are the last big generation of critical thinkers, and we're not gone yet. We're only middle-aged. You guys are in big trouble because we're coming for you.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm noticing is that the people who are the candidates seem to be the Gen Xers, are the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. And that's not to say that they're the only ones, but at the same time, there hasn't been a whole lot of Gen Xers that have got to, and I say people born in the 70s that got to leadership positions in government. Like Albanese's a 60s person. Scott Morrison, I think, was born in 69, so he's probably the youngest. We haven't had a 70s prime minister. I think Jacinda Ardern was born in the 80s. Justin Trudeau likely was born in the 70s. Daniel Andrews, unfortunately, was born in the 70s, so we have to claim him in the Generation X status there. But in terms of US presidents, there's been no US president born in the 70s. I mean, Trump's born in the 40s. Biden, I think, was what, 30s or 40s? No, 20s. 42. Yeah, feels like 10s. And then JD Vance is born in the 80s. So and Obama was 60s.
I wonder if that's deliberate, Jason, missing out the 70s because we're so cool.
Well, this is my point. And so, just another question, another thing. When I was lining up to interview Russell Broadbent, I said to Russell, Albanese has been in office for some 26 years. And I said, do you know how many years he spent in government and how many in opposition? 20 in opposition and 6 in government. And the only 6 were Rudd and Gillard, which was a minority government. And I said, how has he got any experience with governing if that's all you knew in
Well, I think it's
26 years
clear
in
he
office?
doesn't. Albanese is sailing this ship called Australia off the edge of literally Niagara Falls. That's
Mm.
what he's doing. That's what it feels like. We can all see the precipice coming. We can hear the roar of the water. And while we're all screaming on the ship, turn it around, turn it around, he's going, no, keep going straight, mate. He's a bloody fool. He's working for other people. He's not working for Australians. We need to get him out. The guy is absolutely dangerous. He's bought and paid for, right? He's essentially a prostitute. That's what these people are. They're prostitutes. They're taking money in their back pocket so they can do the bidding of some really nefarious, evil people. And I just hope they get a slap in the face. I mean, I saw yesterday, there's an entire town in Australia, by the way, an entire town. And I want to talk about a town in Australia after you've done the news headlines. There's an entire town that's banned Dan Andrews from ever going there. Can you believe that? He can't get bookings in restaurants. Why? Because it's our generation that owns those businesses, the restaurants and the businesses in towns. It's the X generation. And this is the only way we can fight back. These people go and move to America because you're not wanted in Australia anymore. You've done everything you can to destroy it.
Oh, you can go to China. Send Daniel Andrews to China. There you go, Dan. You can have anything you want over there. Xi Jinping will look after you. Let's get into those headlines because afterwards we've got plenty more to discuss and we'll only have about 15 minutes to do it. So here we go. Nicola, I'm going to ask you a question. Are they listening to our show? Because Liberal leader Peter Dutton will pledge to temporarily halve fuel excise if he's elected Prime Minister, and a promise he says could save a family two-car family up to $1,500 in a year. So it can be revealed that the big move would deliver a 25-cent cut to fuel excise for 12 months. It's kind of like a honeymoon period if you elect us. In a major announcement, the Liberals have revealed for the first time the centrepiece of their cost of living measures, throwing down the gauntlet to Labor to match it. It'll cost $6 billion in revenue foregone in a single year, and that's around half the value of the Treasurer's tax cuts over 4 years. It would mean for petrol and diesel, excise rates will be reduced from 50 cents to 25 cents. The weird thing about that, of course, will be the challenges that they'll say to net zero and the climate agenda, and they're going to say, well, he's having a bit each way. But basically, this could be a move for Dutton to get in there and to walk back net zero. So we'll keep an eye on that space. Clothing retailer Jeanswest has collapsed with more than 90 stores set to close within months.
Oh,
Very sad, and hundreds of employees set to lose their jobs. The company confirmed the news Wednesday, with administrators citing increasingly tough trading conditions in the Australian retail sector. Jeanswest entered administration in January of 2020, but was rescued by Hong Kong business Harbour Guidance. The brand is the latest. A local retailer to collapse after the parent company behind Rivers, Katie's and Rockman's also entered administration last year. My point here is, do we need to tariff Temu? I'll park that for a moment. The opening night of this year's Melbourne International Comedy Festival has been abruptly cancelled mid-show following the death of an attendee. The man suffered a medical episode on the upper level of the Palais Theatre during headline act Michael Hing's performance. Attendees told the Daily Mail that members of the public initially provided CPR to the man in the dark as Hing continued his performance unaware of the emergency.
oh.
Aboriginal women are scared to seek help for fear their children will be taken. West Australia has the highest rate of Indigenous child removals in the country, with Aboriginal children making up more than 60% of all children in care. The number of Indigenous children in care in WA increased more than 400% in 20 years, according to the report. In 2003, 570 Aboriginal children were in out-of-home care, making up 35% of total children in care. But by 2023, there were 3,068 Aboriginal children in out-of-home care, and the proportion of children in out-of-home care who were Indigenous had almost doubled. In the United States, President Trump has ordered the immediate declassification of materials related to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. The decision to declassify the materials described above, said President Trump, does not extend to materials that must be protected from disclosure pursuant to orders of the FISA court. FBI Director Kash Patel has just handed over all requested documents to the House members on the 2017 congressional baseball game shooting. This was when Stephen Scalise was attacked. There are documents sought by capital officials for almost 8 years, said Patel. Meanwhile, Patel has announced the interception of a major narcotics operation off the coast of Italy through CBP's Container Security Initiative. They have seized over 2,000 kilos of cocaine from a transnational terrorist organisation who is believed to be responsible for trafficking drugs through South America and across the US southern border. And Dan Bongino has posted that as Deputy Director of the FBI, if you are committing crimes against children, you should probably expect a knock at the door soon. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya has been confirmed as the director of the NIH. That is a big call, given that that is the organisation that oversaw Anthony Fauci. What a turn for the books there. And suspicions are raised about Atlantic journalist and known Trump hater how he got into the Signal chat under a false name. Was he placed there by a Trump staffer working to undermine the administration? Or was it simply an accident? Mike Waltz said he will want to find out. So Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, is a registered Democrat whose wife Anne worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign and donated thousands to the DNC. We're going to discuss a lot more of this after. Now, as for the Democrats calling for blood after the event, it's important to remember their silence when Hillary Clinton ran an entire public server from her basement where at least 21 classified email chains were uncovered by James Comey at the FBI, and who decided not to recommend charges despite such an act being an absolute offence and not requiring any intent. Meanwhile, VP J.D. Vance says The Atlantic magazine's Goldberg oversold the US attack plan story. It's been rewritten as attack plan, not war plan, in The Atlantic. Tulsi Gabbard said she wanted to address briefly the Signal chat issue. As the President and National Security Advisor stated, no classified information was shared. There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared. Meanwhile, American oversight is suing Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, J.D. Vance, and others in the Signal Hootie PC small group chat for a violation of the Federal Records Act. Now, listeners, you will never guess which judge has been assigned to the case. Bum, bum, bum. Judge James Boasberg, the same judge that was ruling on the flights, on the illegal aliens, the same judge who was involved with the Pfizer court, and the same judge that gave Kevin Kleinsmith that sweetheart deal for his role in, would you believe it, Crossfire Hurricane. President Trump has issued a new statement on Greenland ahead of J.D. Vance and his wife's trip this week. He said, "We need Greenland for international safety and security. We need it. We have to have it. We're going to have it." And President Trump has also said that he plans to investigate the unthinkable January 6 fatal shooting of Ashley Babbitt and why the US Department of Justice is still opposing the $30 million wrongful death lawsuit filed by Aaron Babbitt and Judicial Wash. Trump, who said his plans to look into Capitol Police Lieutenant Michael Byrd, who killed Babbitt for a hidden position allegedly before even establishing whether she was armed or otherwise a threat. Byrd has said that he feared for his life, but she was innocently standing there, is the quote. And it was further noted that Michael Byrd, who is now a captain assigned to a training role, making nearly $190,000 a year, was promoted in 2023 and given a medal by the Biden administration in the wake of the fatal shooting. US Rep. Barry Loudermilk, a Republican from Georgia, who detailed Byrd's history of alleged aggressive personal behaviour and reckless use of his service weapon. Nicola.
Ashley Babbitt was gunned down in cold blood, and they rewarded him for it. This is the Democrats. They're monstrous. Now, I just got a quick thing to say about Indigenous children being taken into care at an unusually high rate. This is my opinion. I believe they're being taken into care and injected with things that will sterilise them as a form of ethnic cleansing. This has always been the case with the Aboriginals, the Indigenous tribes in Australia. It's absolutely disgusting. The only bodies that say publicly they seek to protect these tribes are actually the ones doing them harm. And I think it's about time we started a public body in Australia to protect Indigenous people from these awful, evil agendas of governments who know that these original Indigenous Australians have certain land rights, but they don't want to give them their rights back. They want to steal the land and use it for mining and profit. And just to add another headline, The Australia Institute has just released a tweet very concerning regarding a speech made by Yuki Tanabe at the Australia Institute's Climate Integrity Summit 2025. They are saying Australia is selling its gas to Japan so cheaply that Japan is then selling it on to other countries. Big Gas wants us to think that we have a shortage problem, but what we have is an export problem. That is very concerning, Jason.
Certainly is. And let's say, for example, you don't hand out $220,000 per person based on your iron ore, but what you do is you're able to hand out $1,000 a month to all individuals. Imagine that. Or you reduce your monthly income tax by $1,000 a month based on your resources. That's effectively what happens in Qatar. So they have low to no income tax, no health costs, no education costs, and free energy.
That would
So,
make a huge difference to my salary, I can say, if I got $1,000 a month back from tax.
so again, it comes down to the ability to escape the rat race. So people get into the rat race in order to get ahead. If you were living in Sydney and you had nothing to show for your work despite having a six-figure salary, but you were renting and paying $800 a week rent to go to work every day, and at the end of the month there's nothing left in the bank account, why are you in the rat race? But those that get into it and able to save a deposit, buy a property, the value of the property goes up, they have
But
some
then
other
you don't
investment.
actually own it at the end, so it's all a scam.
But at least if you're able to accumulate $3 million or $1 million or $500,000, whatever it is, you can accumulate something. You can escape the rat race and go live out in the country when you want to do that, or
Ah,
in a regional area, or something where it's cheaper to buy into a house. So that's what I'm saying. But to live in the city, to live in Kellyville in northwest Sydney and go to Sydney every day, it might take you an hour and a half in traffic despite paying $30 in tolls. And
okay,
you
so
still,
you've touched on something here that I wanted to bring up with you today very quickly. I learned some stats yesterday that are very concerning about this movement to urbanize us all, right? And this is a global movement, and here's the proof. So in China in 2008, right? It's a bit stats now, very quickly. 624 million Chinese lived urbanly in the cities, and 704 in 2008 lived rurally. Jump to 2018, 831 million live in the cities and 564 million live rurally. That's a drop of over 200 million. Chinese urban migration levels are basically like the entirety of Brisbane moving from the countryside to the city every single month. Every single month. And China to build these cities, China used more cement. You won't believe this one now. I couldn't believe it. I had to research it myself. China, to get people from the rural sectors into the cities, used more cement between 2011 and 2013. That's 2 years, Jason. More cement than the US used in the entire 20th century.
wow.
That's how keen they are for urbanization. Can you believe those stats?
They're impossible to believe, isn't it? And you think Australia with a population of 26 million, we're not even a glitch in the matrix, and yet
I
here
want
we are.
I got to read this out, Jason, because people are messaging me about reading this out. This is very quick. This was a post by a man called Michael Offerdahl, and he said, "We're at breaking point. Statement to GRC councillors, to all Goonalwindi regional councillors. You have each unanimously supported what will be remembered as one of the most divisive, precedent-setting land transfers in Queensland's history. By unanimous council resolution, you've handed 95% of Tubay, a small community with a 100% white population expressing 100% local opposition to the Bigger Bull Corporation, a Brisbane-based entity with no connection to the people, history, or culture of Tubay. Your decision locked the community out of its only source of water. The Queensland government has already made it clear the council's support equals the community's support. Let's be clear, not one Bigamore Corporation member or Aboriginal person lives in Tubay. Not one Tubay resident supported this transfer. The Bigamore Corporation has a public history of fraud, with 1.5 million still missing from the very period they secured their sole native title determination after 8 failed attempts before and since. You approved this transfer, then have since spent up to 250,000. You will not provide the exact figure of local taxpayers' money fighting your own community. So basically, an entire community has had their land rights taken away. And again, this is voice to parliament stuff. In a referendum, Australians said no, and they are going state to state and town to town and doing it anyway, Jason. And again, UN, land rights, moving people into the city. This is Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030.
Yep, it's right there in front of your face, isn't it? It's just interesting the chess moves that get you there, and what's used as an advantage and what's used as a fortunate error. In other words, to progress a certain strategy or narrative or agenda.
They're
Now,
giving towns to corporations.
yeah,
All the worst fears are happening.
yes. So again, Don Bradman, that's the batting average that we all put our heads down for. The autodidacts also criticised and vilified as conspiracy theorists. None of the above. Just proves that we're right yet again. I wanted to talk to you, Nicola, about the signal scandal, because there's two sides to every story, and the Democrats are using it as their version of Watergate. They think they've stumbled across something enormous. But at the same time, we've got a defence from the Trump administration, but we've also got a third narrative being exposed, and that is the possibility that what's actually happened here is that we have discovered an infiltration of Operation Mockingbird in real time. So Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, is a registered Democrat whose wife, Anne, worked for Hillary Clinton and donated thousands to the DNC. That's what we revealed in the news. But he's the same man who promoted the now debunked claim that there were connections between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. He also asserted that Trump was acting as a de facto agent of Putin during the 2016 election. He also published the widely disputed story that Trump called fallen US soldiers suckers and losers. He also praised General Mark Milley for bypassing a sitting president to warn China of a potential US attack. He also pushed an unverified claim that Trump admired Hitler and his generals. Given his track record of hoax narratives and partisan bias, Goldberg's credibility has long since diminished. So Glenn Greenwald has exposed the intel agencies conspiring against Trump, and Judge Boasberg's role in the Signal Chat lawsuit is another example. And he says they've been conspiring against Trump to sabotage him. It seems like it's happening again in this case based on what's been done. Meanwhile, Mark Levin, another commentator, said, he said, honestly, I don't give an SH1T what the media and Democrats say. The Democrat media and Democrats are desperately trying to create a scandal with the Atlantic story. There's no scandal, he says. There was no threat to our armed forces or ongoing mission, and the president will get to the bottom of it. He says the Democrats have selective moral outrage when these things happen, like Eric Swalwell, Mark Warner, Adam Schiff, and then there was Alger Hiss, Ted Kennedy, and on and on. He said in those cases, the national security breaches or attempted breaches were intentional. The first unconstitutional impeachment of President Trump was based on a national security leak. The ruling class, he argues, is as corrupt as hell. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance, who we said earlier, said it's very clear that Goldberg oversold what he had, but one thing in particular really stands out. Remember when he was attacking John Ratcliffe for blowing the cover of a CIA agent? Well, it turns out that Ratcliffe was simply naming his chief of staff. So these are just some of the examples of the using of the story to push a certain narrative and the lies that they will tell at the margins. Now, is Goldberg Operation Mockingbird? It's starting to appear more than likely. And the person who put his name in the chat, JG, was meant to have been a fellow called Jamison Greer, who was some security person in the administration. And so they're arguing that maybe they weren't meant to put JG was Jamison Greer, and instead they put Jeff Goldberg. But Mike Waltz is now saying we'll get to the bottom of who put it in. So the question is the person who put it in an infiltrator in the Trump administration, possibly a spy, or possibly an agent of the art of war? Because here's the point. the moment that it's happened, and then this particular organisation has decided to sue all these people, and then surprisingly, Judge Boasberg, there he is again, Mr. Pfizer himself, Mr. Kevin Kleinsmith, Mr. Immigration, let's bring all the illegal criminals back into the country, is the judge presiding. Is he the only judge in the United States, for goodness sake?
Judge of
But
choice. I'll tell you who released all that stuff and did all that. It was their machine, Jason. It was AI. That's what I mean. They can get all our messages. There is no privacy anymore.
But the point was, Jeffrey Goldberg was accidentally added into it, and he's revealed all the information. And he's an anti-Trumper. But I'm wondering now, and this is why the story is still developing. There's two new possibilities. He got dumb luck and got in there, but what he did was something that was entirely unethical. So if you're in a group like that with these very high-powered officials, what you should have done if you're a journalist, because remember, an off-the-record conversation is different to an on-the-record conversation. So literally,
Apparently.
so literally, he's in an off-the-record information situation. He should have announced himself and said, "Look, guys, I think I'm in the wrong room. It's Jeff Goldberg here. Would you like me to leave? Delete me."
Yes.
That's what he should have done.
That's
But instead,
ethics, but they don't have any ethics on the left.
exactly. So he's thinking he's going to expose this great scandal, and it's not such a great big scandal. But I wonder if he was put in there. Now, could the person that put his name in there, which wasn't Mike Waltz, but probably someone who worked for Mike Waltz, was that person a traitor, or was that person setting it up because they knew that they would do this, they would create something out of nothing, they would go to a courtroom, they would expose Judge Boasberg, because now it looks like Boasberg is clearly corrupt. Whoever is putting Boasberg up to it is clearly corrupt. Jeff Goldberg is clearly corrupt, and Jeff Goldberg took the bait and went and did this. So
Maybe it's like a reverse honey trap, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what's going on. They sort of found out who the leakers are, who the traitors are, right? They've perfectly found out.
Now, I asked Dave Shostokis on my show on A&R. I said, "Do you think that there's a pathway to military tribunals?" And he said, "Look, I certainly hope not. But if you're looking at something like this, and this Judge Boasberg is doing the best possible case to show that the judiciary is corrupt, and if it's him, and then it flows, and there are others, there will come a time where these people are going to commit treason in real time, which will force the hand of the military." And that's what I'm saying here. It just looks like that this narrative, if we're watching a movie, or if this is planned, or whatever it is, or it's predestined, or it's AI, or it's time travel in reverse, and all these crazy things, it's just funny how we keep coming up trumps, no pun intended. We keep predicting what's going to happen in real time, and it plays out before our very eyes. There is no way in the world that these guys can be this far into it, and that thing was done so carelessly that they made a mistake. But it's the opposite. It just seems it's backfiring every time on this Goldberg. The Goldberg is a disgraced journalist that still gets to play along in this game, but he is a known liar, and he's not the only one.
Look, we know now in all of our countries there are people working for true democracy and for the civilians in nations, and there are people working for the deep state, the corporations, and the same people that say, "Oh, no one's house can be bigger than anyone else's house," are the very people that live in $60 million massive enclaves and own half of Martha's Vineyard. So I think they're just weeding out. I do think that the Trump administration and whoever's advising Trump is a lot better at soft war, cold war strategy than even I gave them credit for. And I guess you don't become a real success in business unless you were always good at strategy. And I know when you're doing when I was doing my business and finance degree, there's loads of economics and there's loads of different modules. But strategy and that kind of strategy and getting intel and all that kind of thing, it's not really focused on that much. And there's a reason for that, and that's because it's really important. Like you actually really need to be good at strategy. And they obviously are, because eventually, it's like that thing, that saying that if you give someone enough rope, eventually they hang themselves. And if you dangle enough carrots, they come crawling out of the woodwork like cockroaches, Jason. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's a good thing. I think when there's anything like this, any kind of expose, I think it's actually a good thing, because you really find out who everyone is, who's who in the zoo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? Just how much we're learning in real time at a speed like we wouldn't believe. I just feel like we are entering a stage now that everything is now on the table. We are in a unique position here in Australia that we're witnessing big change coming in our favour more than against us at a time where here in Australia we're still going down this other funnel. And this election is a strange turning point, and we're going to realise that what we're being offered really is like $5 a week from Labor and $10 a week promise here, and Liberals are going to throw us a few bucks here on fuel. But deliberately, it's a good thing because it goes against net zero. If you're going to drop the excise on fuel, they're going to say, well, it's encouraging you to drive further. Well, so be it. It's the one luxury that we've got left. You don't let us do anything else. We might as well go use our cars and drive to a job further away so we can afford to live in the first place. Like, I'm just being cranky about it. But then you put that against the minerals idea, and if suddenly we get a conversation started amongst third-party movements that, hey, we'd like a big piece of the pie, and these guys go, well, we can't because we've got these deals. Well, we go, we don't need you in office anymore. We don't need Labor. We don't need Liberal. We're going to renegotiate all of our mineral deals here and let it fall where it may. You guys
I
want our
want public
coal?
accounting on that. We need public accounting on all of these energy sources that are being given away or sold cheaply, obviously deliberately. I mean, the whole thing with gas going to Japan and then they sell it on as if it's their gas to sell. It's our gas to sell. How dare
Yeah.
you? And listen, I just want to give the listeners a little it's not a tip. I wouldn't call it a tip, and I certainly don't give financial advice. But I just want to give you two examples of women, mums, doing it for themselves, who make cash, a lot of cash, I will say, um, doing these two different businesses. Right? If you're looking to bolster your income, or someone needs to be sort of part time and stay at home, for Australians who are doing it tough, and I think the fact that they're doing it tough, we should sort of help them and work for them. I've got a friend who has a weekend market stall selling, quite a large one, selling used books, and apparently clears a lot of cash, over $1,600 cash in one day on a market stall. And I've got another friend who has one of these food trucks that takes around sandwiches and sausage rolls and pies to various businesses, people who can't, for whatever reason, they've got to be on site, leave their business for a lunch break, let's say. And this lady, this mum, has a little van with a flip up side and a fridge inside it and sells all these sandwiches and pies, clears over $3,000 a week, usually in cash. So I'm just saying to people, there are things you can do to survive this economic situation that they have forced us into. People are getting clever, people are getting smart, and I'm glad to see that a lot of the smart people out there who are getting very clever are mums, Jason.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Love it, and the ability in a period where mums especially had to rethink the way that their household ran, their family ran, etc., were able to use that time to create something new and different and to take that plunge. Congratulations, and we want to see more of it. And innovation and necessity, of course, are the mother of invention. So there you go.
X generation again, Jason. These are both X generation ladies, I will say. You're in trouble. All you oldies, all you old farts taking money and doing the wrong thing. The X generation are coming for you.
Mm.
And we're getting towards the end of the show, Jason. Nice long one today. What would you like to say before we go?
Well, I am certainly buoyed by what's going on. I'm encouraged what I'm seeing, and also we are reaching out to more and more people in terms of interviews. The show will, one way or another, will be expanding in different directions as we approach the election. So I'm thrilled that the feedback keeps coming in and people are very happy. What I'd like to hear from our viewers, our listeners, I should say, is please let us know in what directions you would like to see more of, or people that you'd like to see us get in touch with, or strategies. And the question is, are you confident that we are looking at a possible improvement in our lives, or are you still defending the status quo, meaning that you don't want to go backwards? There's two ways of looking at this. I think we can fight on both fronts, but I'm very interested to know what you think at home.
Yeah, and keep the messages coming in. I'm surprised more of you haven't done that thing we suggested of sending a short voice clip to the Daily Australian at gmail.com for us to air on the show. You guys are a little bit chicken. You know, you do send me messages, but voice messages, but you tell me they're private. So I haven't done that. I am trying to protect my sources on information and questions. But thanks for all the effort, going to Grok and doing all that AI stuff. We really, really appreciate it. And more importantly, thank you for doing that thing that these awful globalists always use this word resilience. We're going to be resilient. In other words, we're going to rob you blind. We're going to do the wrong thing and you're just going to put up with it. But actually, as far as I can see here, Australians in particular, because we've really had our feet put to the fire, we have been resilient. We've rallied, we've pivoted, we've changed jobs, careers, we've done what we had to do to survive. And I have such admiration for you people. I know for a fact you're working your ass off and you're paying these outrageous mortgage and bills. And I'm very, very proud of you, Australia. We're here for you. We will keep bringing as much news and truth to you as possible. So thanks for checking in again with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olborn. We will do this all over again tomorrow, Friday, for the last show of the week. See you then.